Yep, we're all live. So, shall we start?
Yes,
Mm.
sure. One second, Stephen.
Okay, I'll wait for your signal then.
Okay. I just want to test. Can everybody here on Instagram, if somebody just can maybe
Yeah.
send a signal on Instagram that it's working, because we're trying to stream three things at the same time.
Yep. It's slightly delayed, but it's working.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody watching on Instagram wants better angles, like a close up, and they can hear Stephen, who's moderating this, I suggest that you head on to Zoom or to Facebook. The details are on Facebook right now. So, Stephen.
Yeah. Hi. So, thanks for being here today, everyone. So, I'm just gonna admit a few more people, and then Chloe's here. And yeah, so thank you everyone for being here. So Jacob and I were discussing about having this little lecture thing for my cello studio, and then we thought like, oh, why don't we just make it into like a public thing so that everybody can see and listen to this lecture as well as my students from the studio. And so I actually met Jacob at the Scandinavian Cello School last year, right? So I was there for a week and learning and doing a lot of different things at the place. And I really learned a lot. And I hope you guys will benefit from this little lecture as well. So you can start now, Jacob.
Okay, so the reason why we decided to also stream this on Instagram is I've been having a lot of questions on Instagram, and a lot of them I'm making one answer, which is always watch cello yoga. So what happened last summer in Mexico is we did a little stream about my warm-up technique and different ways to help develop your sound and confidence on the cello. And this is an amalgamation of everything that I've been teaching for about the last 10 years and everything that I have also got from different teachers. So I'm in no way sitting here saying this is my method at all. This is an amalgamation of some fantastic different things that I was taught over the years. And my idea with the cello yoga method was to develop some kind of consistency with exercises that we can do every day. As a lot of you know, we are traveling around, we're not always able to grab the ideal conditions for practicing, and it's the same when we're studying. Maybe we can grab a practice from a school and we have to go to a rehearsal and then come back and so on. So the idea is that these sets of exercises can be played, some of them every day. If you have a bit more time, you can continue. If you have a lot of time, you can do the whole exercises, but the point is to give a solid base. The reason for the cello yoga name, this was named by some of my students. I'm very, very bad at yoga and I've never really done it in my life. My girlfriend does it every day religiously, but I will fall over if I try to do it. So she does this every day for the mind and for the body. And this is exactly why we call the cello exercises cello yoga, because we're doing it for our mind and we're doing it for our body. So it's something that I feel that when I get up or I come to the cello, I can really sit down and I can relax not only into the cello, into the sound, but also with my mind to totally focus. So if you have questions as we go along, just type them out, and then Stephen will be moderating this both on Facebook, Instagram, and Zoom. But as I said before, if you are listening in on Instagram, I would suggest that perhaps you could head on over to Facebook or Zoom. Stephen, is everybody hearing this okay? I can see a
Yeah.
comment coming up.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. A few of my students are in. Chloe is in. A few of them from the event is in as well. So, yeah, I guess you can start. Yeah.
Okay, so before we start with these exercises, I'll explain. So we'll split them into quarters. And before we start the first exercise, which is the most simple, which is based around open strings in first position for the solidity, I want to explain a little bit about the bow hold. The bow hold is something which I've been laughing silently to myself for the last year or so, with a lot of different cellists putting tutorials up with fantastic new methods of holding the bow. To be completely honest with you, there is more or less one way to play with the bow, which is on the string parallel to the bridge and side to side. Whether we stand on our head and hold the bow to do that, that's a different aspect. But for me, certainly, I am working around 3 points of contact on the bow with the fingers. And the reason for that is because I feel with my body that I can have as much pull and as much push while staying relaxed. So let me explain. For those on Facebook, you get a nice close-up now of the bow hold. For those on Instagram, I'm sorry, it's not going to be so up close and personal, but if you head on over to Facebook or Zoom, you can have a look. So here we have the bow. Are we on the front camera now, Stephen?
Yeah, we are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. The bow. So this is what Andre Navarre used to call dead man's hold. So like a hand from a corpse. If you're teaching little kids, I find it much more useful to call this bananas, bunch of bananas. It's a little less morbid. So we have 1, we relax. 2, I inclinate the hand. And 3, I take the bow in the left hand and place it in with the little finger on the eye. The reason for doing the inclination is that we are relaxed, we incline, and when we come in, we have a perfect way to come in. If we come in with the wrists, we always have to have an action where some part of the bow, we're going to lose the contact. We're going to lose the contact point. And that's the reason why I stay with an inclinated hand this way. Once we've had that first contact, if you notice all the fingers are totally relaxed, it's a common misfeature on the cello that sometimes we have the first finger which is grabbing in. And that's never going to be good because we have our shoulder which is bringing the natural weight in. And when we bring the natural weight in, if we have a finger that's pulling up with the weight, it means that we are going to be pulling up that good weight with it. So, step 1, step 2, step 3. Now, what happens with the thumb? If we turn the bow over, we can have a look. And in the thumb, you know what? I will help Instagram out here. If that's okay. Can we see?
Yeah.
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm sorry, Instagram is a few seconds behind my own camera, so I don't know what's happening. So the thumb is here. So with a nice bent thumb. Now, why do we bend the thumb? If we bend the thumb, if you imagine on a car, we have suspension on the wheels, right? So when we go over a bump with a car, the wheels and suspension will stop the movement in the car if the suspension is working. So the suspension comes up and down and we stay straight. With the thumb, if we have a bent thumb, it means that when we go over our bump, i.e. if we change the bow, the thumb will cushion that. It will mean that we can have a much softer bow grip here. So we have the main contact point for me, the shoulder relaxed, little finger, first finger, and the thumb underneath. Okay, so last time to recap, dead man's hold or bunch of bananas. It's inclinate, place the bow in, and thumb bend. Okay, so now we have the basic bow hold. As I said, the trend of this teaching online in the last year and giving seminars, everybody will give a different opinion. But if you really look at all the great cellists in the world, I would say 85% is coming in with an inclination of the wrist and relaxing. And that's scientifically really the only way that we can be smooth if we think of where the joint is. That's the reason why I don't come in and collapse the hand here. You need to sometimes in the biggest romantic music, but as a basic rule, basic inclinated wrist. Okay, so on to the first set of exercises. And this is, everybody will laugh when they say this, but it's literally starts with open strings, which is no secret. As I said, this is all different amalgamations of exercises and different things that I've picked up over the years. But if we remember the name Cello Yoga, I think that when we're playing these open strings, we have the chance really to breathe, to try to breathe through the sense of core and to imagine to pull. So as I pull the string, I imagine that the gravity is coming down towards the bridge as much as we can. So we're going to try to play as close to the bridge as possible without the sound cracking. By cracking, I mean this. You hear the crack? So if we relax, we breathe in and we breathe out. And we pull the bow. One very important thing about this, yes, it's open strings, but how do we change the bow and be smooth? I guess this is because I'm living at the sea, but I have very much in my mind this water and the sea. So if we can imagine that when the sea is in and then going out again, what happens to the seaweed and the plants underneath? They're moving, the water moves, and then the seaweed moves, right? So water moves, seaweed moves, water moves, seaweed moves. It's exactly the same with the bow and the body. So if I'm moving to the left side, my water is the shoulders, and the seaweed is the bow. So water moves, and we're remembering all the time to breathe out and in. I like to breathe sometimes through the lips. It sounds like a horse, but we're really moving out and back. So we're talking about a very small movement. It's almost the top kind of 16th of the bow. It's really the last bit that we move to the other bow. And if we have, as I explained before, this is the reason with this contact, 3 contact points, 1, 2, 3. That's the reason where we can be completely flexible. And really, really, really important is the first finger that we're not grabbing in. So this I'm starting always on the D string. And why do I start on the D string? Because I have the cello very flat on the D string. When we move to the D, I push a little bit up with my cello. You can see it when I move this way, actually. So I am moving this part of the back, and pushing forward. And as I push forward, you'll notice that the cello drops to the left side. I'm using a bent end pin, and the reason for this is when I have a bent end pin, it means I can angle. And why do we want to angle? We want to angle on the bottom strings so that the back can stay as straight as possible. If the back can stay as straight as possible, if we imagine Jesus on a cross, it's completely straight here, right? So if we move the cello, C string, G string, D string, A string, it means that our body doesn't have to do the work. If we're turning all the time our body, the shoulder's going to get stiff and we're going to start to press the sound. If we press the sound, this is the biggest misconception, that the more pressure, the more sound. And we see now a lot of, we can't avoid, but there's a lot of cellists all over Instagram and YouTube and Facebook, and they're putting up loads and loads of videos, which is great, really great. But you can always tell when somebody has a big sound or not. Doesn't matter whether it's a video, because you can tell that with their body. If they're pressing the sound down here, this way, it may sound loud under the ear, but it's never going to be ringing in the same way that when we play with this, like I said, the seaweed, if we open up the body this way. So we really want to breathe out. I like to play it as slow as possible, and the more that we play actually on our cellos near the bridge with the relaxed bow stroke, the more the actual core of the cello sound is going to come out. When I say core, if we hear, for example, this is in my head a little bit, the typical huge, great German orchestral cello sound. And why does it sound like that when we hear great symphonies and huge cello sections? It's not because they're all, you know, huge cellists, but it's this contact point for me on the string. And if you look at the contact point and this way of playing down, we get overtones. So the overtones on the cello, if I show you, this is a sound without really overtones. And then if I play with a parallel to the bridge with all my relaxation, yeah, we get the overtones. I hope that makes sense also through this camera and the speakers. But for me, a big sound is a sound full of overtones. It's not necessarily the volume direct sound, because that sound will drop. But the way to fill the hole, it doesn't matter whether you're playing piano or forte, it's to have the overtones. So you can actually play a very, very piano sound when you're playing in a huge concert hall. But if the overtones are there, we will still have this character of a piano sound, but it will reach right to the back of the hall. And this is so important with our way to turn the cello so that we can stay flat on the string, right angles to the string, and then parallel to the bridge. So this parallel to the bridge will be much easier, much more easy when you turn it. So we do that on all four strings. I won't bore you with them all, but I would recommend that you start first on D string, then G, then A, then C. But of course, this is up to you. You can choose anyway. For me, that's the best way to relax. Soul is first thing. So it's the first exercise that we're thinking about. Now, there's an add-on to this exercise, which is that we start to bring the left hand in. We've talked so much about the relaxation of the shoulder and this pulling, this seaweed, this really pulling out the sound and getting the overtones. But the left hand also has to be as relaxed. So when I say relaxed in the left hand, I see often that the huge problem when I'm teaching is that a lot of people is squeezing. They're squeezing between the thumb and the first finger. And this squeezing between the thumb and the first finger, you may think that you're putting a lot of pressure in, but actually you're tensing up the whole hand. And I don't know if people have had problems where their forearm and their under here start to get very tense in the muscle here. That should never happen, because that happens only when you squeeze. So how do we make the good contact between the string and the fingers? If you imagine when a cat is if you imagine when a cat is jumping and landing, they're landing like this. They're landing straight down. They've got no thumb to jump as if we would and grab. So if we imagine that we here are jumping and we're and we're having the whole weight on the shoulder. Don't collapse the elbow. The elbow should still be ready to play here, and we have the whole weight coming down. Now, if we're coming down, be careful that the thumb is also not pulling out this way, because pulling out this way will also give you tension, and that gives you as much tension as squeezing. So we want to have a nice light touch to the fingerboard, as if you would polish. So we have as much contact as possible. If you think of when little kids play a recorder and the sound squeaks, that's because the sound is not covering the hole properly. It's exactly the same here. So we are going to use the first part of the first exercise, which is these slow bows. And slowly, we're going to place the first finger out. So what I'm doing now is I'm finding the perfect fourth. Once I've found it, we really sit with this pressure down. The most important thing when we put down this first finger is when we play completely in tune, so we get the overtones coming on. If we play, for example, too low, acknowledge you're too low. Don't try to move it and get it in tune. Acknowledge you're too low, lift it off, then try again. Too high, lift off. Perfect. Now we sit, like I explained, almost as this cat jumps. And we go back to thinking very much of the right hand when I explained earlier about this seaweed and pulling motion. And back again. Really sitting solid. When this is completely solid, we go to the second finger. Exactly the same technique. If we think that it's too high, too low, lift off. Don't try to change the intonation, and then we get used to this. So come down correctly, and again third. This way, you can hear the overtones. Again, this is what I mean about this pulling the bow. This way, we're going to get a completely solid. For the guys on Facebook, you can see probably the small camera where the little marks are on the fingers. This is now completely solid with the flat pad. So we don't want to play on the top of the pad, and we don't want to play completely bottom, but we want to have this relaxed feeling. It's almost like a piano that we're coming down. So this is the second section of the first exercise. When we have all the first fingers in all the positions, then we can move on to the second exercise. Second exercise, we're continuing on with this relaxed way of breathing out and still pulling and pushing, but we're going to change now to 1 octave scales on 1 string. So if we start first with what I call chain bowing, and this is 1 note to the next note, play the next note, then to the next note. So if I try on G string, again from the first exercise, the intonation, we're still sitting down, really feeling the contact, really feeling the contact here with the bow. Sitting down, then when we shift to the 4th position, we need pressure, release, pressure. So again, we have this little R, pressure, we release the pressure, we move with the elbow, and then we place the pressure back. So pressure, release. The most important thing is that we keep this bow with the full contact, that we're still pulling along. We're still moving. And now, 3, 1, 2. So this is a 1-octave scale, of course, but now what we're going to do is we're going to play one note over this. So this is G major, we're going to play up to an A. The reason for this is that we start to imagine this rounded shape. So we want to be able to play perfectly rounded in this position. That means keep the shoulder down, push a little bit the elbow forward. If it's perfectly in tune, you're going to hear the open string. So the fingering 0, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay? Now with the bow, as I said, we're still going with this very, very relaxed bowing, pulling, push. I like to think of this a little bit as autopilot. If you don't know what autopilot is, when pilots are in the air with the aeroplane, they press the button, autopilot, and the plane more or less is taking care of itself. That's the point. Is after we've done the first exercise where the bow is so much with the gravity down towards the bridge, pulling and pushing, we should be able to start doing things with the left hand. First of all, the first position, and now these 1-octave scales with the left hand. And that means that we can more or less forget, not completely forget, but allow the bow to do its stuff, to stay always down near to the bridge and pulling and pushing. So we start with the chain bowing. Pressure release, shift elbow. Pressure release. Always quickly. And then our extra note, finger. Still remembering our relaxed body. Pressure release. And again, pressure release. Elbow. And back. Now we're going to place the right foot. And so on, then slow by 3. And once we've done that, we come back to the bottom. And we can try the other strings. So what we're doing is we're exploring up to 4th and higher position, that we're keeping all the perfect angles that we can get, relaxed, bringing the arm around, keeping pulling. The idea, more or less, is that as these exercises progress, we've now done 2 out of the 4 of them. We learn to play every single position with every single possibility with the bow. And once we can play every single note in every single position, of course, that means that once we come to play our pieces, our etudes and so on, it will be much, much easier because we'll already have that sensitivity and a way to find those overtones. And as I said, the overtones is the way to get the big sound. It's nothing to do with the pressure, to do with force or to do with pressing, but it's to do with really pulling and pushing. I much prefer in French the way they say tire pousse. They don't say up down, they say pull push. In English we say up and down, which for me is already starting on the wrong way, that we're going up and down, but we should really pull and push the bow with this seaweed going. Okay, so now we have had the open strings in the first position, first exercise, second exercise going on these 1 octave scales, and then after this, now we're ready for the third exercise, which is again with the same right arm and the same bowing, but it's the shifting. So shifting, there's many different exercises, and of course you can do all of these exercises as you wish, as long as as I started to explain the scale, we always have this pressure, elbow, release, pressure again. That's more or less the basic for shifting. However, with all these great exercises that there are, I think it's quite good also with this cello yoga method, which I said is a way for us to start our physical and mental preparation, as it were, for the day's work. We can really try to do this with a back to basics exercise, and that simply means that I'm practicing between 1 1 2 2 3 3 4 4 as the first exercise. So if I show you on the A string, first of all, we have our position. As I said, we drop a little bit so that our shoulders can stay straight to the cello. So 1 1. The bow stays near the bridge. That's 1 1, and now 2 2. If you notice that we have this pattern, so it's da dee da dee da dee 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. And it's important that we keep this repetitive bow. Of course, we're going very slow, but it means that, again, we're going on this autopilot, that the bow keeps going very smooth. The problem with shifting often is that people are going to bump. I make this mistake as well, that we're going to bump with the bow as we're practicing. And the main point is that we keep our bow as straight, as parallel to the bridge, as relaxed near the bridge as possible. And it doesn't matter what we're doing with the left hand, the bow should still stay. So we have 1 I'm still breathing and moving. We're still completely free with the body. Pressure, release, pressure. We relax still, and 4 4 is the last one. Pressure, release, pressure, release, pressure, and then we just go backwards. So I do have this written down. If you can see on Facebook and Zoom, this is the rhythm. I will just help you on Instagram. I think that's basically the rhythm. I hope you can see that. Okay. So we take this same rhythm, the same way with the bow. We do that in all the strings. Now that's the first exercise in this third set of exercises, right? And now we've done the basics, 1 1 2 2 3 3 4 4. So now we can go to octave. Same technique. Pressure, release. And if you notice that we have still this rounded position, as if you can fit an orange or a fist underneath. we still have this rounded position, which we were working on in the second set of exercises. If you remember this scales, so here we have that. So we're going back again, reinforcing that we're staying calm and breathing. Pressure release. Pressure release. So we do with 1, 3. Now, next one, 2 to 3. If you notice so far, we're not doing what they call in French passing the thumb. We keep the thumb down to the side. This, of course, depends on the length of your hand, but I think that even if you have a small hand, you should be able to get around all the way to the C sharp. Here. Even with a small hand, you can choose to place here, here, if you have a bigger hand here, as long as you can stay rounded. Because I think that it's important that we don't bring the thumb up on these exercises until we get to the last one, which is thumb position. In my head, I think a little bit that the 3 easiest positions on the cello is first position, fourth position, and thumb position. These are our basic 3 sets. So we're really imagining here that we go up. So just to recap, the second of these exercises, first one's 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4. Now we go 1, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, thumb position. This is all with chain bowing in the pattern which I just showed you on the paper, and we're still going. Once we've done that, we do that on all 4 strings again. And that will be even when we're shifting up here. So we're really in this position, keeping the shoulders relaxed, head up, tilted to the right, so to encourage our arm to open. But the left hand has the solidity, as we talked about. We want to avoid this with like little kids playing the recorder, that they don't cover the hole and they don't make the sounds. If you feel like you want to practice more on shifting, I do this now in compounds. So you can do it with any interval. You can keep on going if you choose the interval compound 3rd, compound 4th, even 2 octaves at a time. And I think that encourages us really with the same movement, this pressure, release, pressure. We should theoretically be able to go all the way. All the way up. And we're still thinking that we're really pulling with the bow. So by this stage, after having done our open strings in first position, our 1 octave scales, and now our shifting, I think you'll realize now, even on the first day of doing these exercises, that we're really still focused on this pulling aspect, this right angle to the bow, relaxed shoulder, head up, and coaxing the sound out. I think that you'll discover that the cello is already ringing almost by itself. So now we can skip now to the 4th exercise, which I guess probably many of you are already doing. And this is now all the basic scales, arpeggios, and double stops. The reason why I leave this for last is because we're now mixing together. So we're mixing the bow, we're mixing the positions of the cello, we're mixing the different positions, and now we're gonna mix them up by playing all the notes in between those positions. So I start always, like in the 1-octave scales, with chain bowing. So if I take, for example, E flat major, really thinking here, no vibrato. We're really pushing for the cello, C string, pressure release again. We're mixing all these techniques that we've just been practicing. So we keep going. This is all the way up. And I use this traditional fingering, which I'm sure many of you do, which is any 2 fingers, and then first finger. And then once we get on the first finger, we're going to finger it with no open strings. So then when we get to the last octave, just as it comes, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So we're going to start with chain bowings. When we've done our chain bowings, this is still without vibrato. Then go slurred by 4. Still near the bridge. After slurred by 4, slurred by octave. Still breathing out before we start. And then slurred by 2 octaves. 4 octaves. And so on. After this, arpeggios. I have 3 fingerings which I use for the arpeggios. First one, I'm sure many of you are already doing, which is classic fingering. Shift. Shift. Once we do that, we practice first of all chain bowing always, but I like to keep the 4th for the intonation. So when I mean keep the 4th, I mean this 4th. Now, sitting. So on. After that, slurred by 3. Slurred by 6. Then slurred by all octaves. That's the first fingering. Second fingering. We start on a 1. 4. So we get to the A string as fast as possible. And now on the A string, we go straight up. So, again, 1. To the A string, and then it would help if you practice slowly first, so it's in tune. That's the second fingering. We do the same chain bowing, slurred by 3, slurred by 6, slurred by all of them. Third fingering, thumb. Thumb, 2, thumb, then thumb, thumb. So, thumb, 2, thumb, 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 2, thumb, 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 2, thumb, 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 and then we finger out to the top. We keep the thumb. With the thumb, very important that we are always keeping, you can see probably better on the Facebook stream, this angle. If you see on Instagram, I hope you can see that. this angle, the bent angle. If you play with the thumb the other way around, it means that we don't have this capability of stretching up. If we play with it that way around, when we stretch, it will push the pitch down. If we imagine that the thumb is here and we can go this way, it's like if you're warming up and you go like that with your body. It's the same with the thumb. We're pushing the hands over there. So that means that if we're in the lowest positions, of course, it will be very much like this. As we go up, of course, it gets more and more flat, but it's impossible to play like this. And it depends also on the size of your thumb. I've got a very long thumb, so it means that I have to bring the elbow around. If you have a less big hand, you don't have to bring the elbow around so much. You just push a little bit forward. So that was the arpeggios. Still on the fourth exercise. Now, after arpeggios, I would go to double stops. So double stops, thirds. Starting very simple. Once we've done that, all the way up, then chain bowing. Thirds, all the way up. I'm sure that you may be doing this already at home, but we really have to reinforce that this is extremely important still, I would say, and it's nice to be able to still get there. Once we've done the thirds, we have sixths. Sixths. All the way up and down, and then octaves. So octaves, we have two different fingerings we can try. First fingering. In the middle strings. Third and thumb. The second fingering we might be able to try, and it's the one that I take for flexibility. I switch to fourth finger. And then switch back. It means that when we're playing faster runs, we can switch and go back. So we have this going up, fourth now, and then back to third. The most important thing with this shape is that, again, like the first exercises, we're imagining that we're playing the piano. We still have this hand position. On the cello, we have the luxury of being able to use a thumb. So we have this hand position as if we're playing on the piano, and then up. You know, if you think about it, that we have at the moment the right hand here and the left hand here, if we're playing thumb position. If we just switch those two over, it's exactly the same. Exactly the same. The two hands, they're both relaxed and they're both sitting there, and this is the octaves. So that's the end of the fourth exercise that we have these. So just to recap, first exercise, we have, first of all, we set up the bow. We have the open strings in the first positions. Then we move on slowly, and once we've got those first positions sorted out in chain bowing and with the good intonation, we then go on to the second exercise, which is the one octave scales, and that was 0, 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and we're playing this extra note at the top. We're thinking all the time about this pulling and pushing, the seaweed effect, as I called it earlier, and the breathing out when we're doing the breathing out. Once we've done that second set of exercise, one octaves on everything, we move to the shifting. And the shifting, of course, you can do your shifting exercise that you choose, but I advise you very much that we take those shifting exercises, which I said, going back to the basics with this chain bowing, with the pattern of bowing that I explained. I'm really sitting down with the shoulder and the pressure and the release. 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4. Then after that, it's up to you. After we've done that on all strings, we then move on to the basic scales, arpeggios, double stops, which I'm sure you are all doing, or I hope you are all doing during your study days, and even if you're not in your study days. But this will increase our dexterity and flexibility across all the 4 strings. So with that in mind, this is moving slightly on from this cello yoga things, which is what we should be practicing. And that's probably the most common, I don't want to say error, but that's the most common point when I go to teach out students that aren't mine about their setup of what they're practicing. Because I know that when you're studying in the university or music school, we don't unfortunately have as much time with our main teachers necessarily as we would like and as they would like. So it means that when you're going in for 1 lesson a week, or maybe 2 lessons a week if you're very lucky, we don't necessarily as teachers have the time to go through the whole set of repertoire that we're practicing. But what I would suggest is a very strict form of what you would like to be practicing yourself at home. And for my students, certainly, I have this rule that we have the following repertoire. So we start always in the day with the cello yoga. After the cello yoga, we would then move on to an etude. Now, an etude, I would always recommend having 2 etudes on the go. If we say pop etude, for example, the first week, or depending how quick you can learn, the first 2 weeks, we are learning 1 etude. Whilst we're learning that 1 etude, we will finish learning that with the music. When we finish learning that with the music, we take the second proper etude. And the second proper etude, we start to learn with the music, but at the same time, when we're learning that one with the music, we're starting to learn the first etude by memory, if that makes sense. So we have always 1 learning from memory and 1 learning with the notes. When you've learned that from memory and you've played it, we then switch it over. So the one that we were learning with the sheets, we now kick off the one which we've learned, we tick that off, and we start a new one. So we start the new one with the sheets, and the one with the sheets that we were learning, we learn that from memory, if that makes sense. So we always have this double system. That applies, of course, to etudes which are in similar length, but I'm sure intelligently you can work that out. It's a little bit different if you're starting to practice these long Grußmacher or Chiatti or any of those slightly longer, more complicated ones. But certainly with proper etudes, there's 40 of them, and certainly as a university student or a music school student, you should be doing your way through those 40. I have a checklist on the front of my tour, as do some of my students, when we tick them off, and I've played some of them 4 or 5 times in that way. So we have the cello yoga and all those exercises, then we have the etudes. After etudes, I think it would be very, very good always to have some solo Bach. Bach is the staple of our repertoire, and it's never ending work. So I would recommend it during a semester, we would have 1 suite on the go. That doesn't mean that we're practicing all the movements at the same time, but it means that certainly we have that. So we have our yoga, etude, solo Bach. Then after the solo Bach, depending on the level of your playing, I would recommend to have something which is more in the classical way. That could be a Boccherini sonata, a Haydn concerto, Valentini, anything like that. I just have to let the cat go. The cat's now gone. After that, classical repertoire, I would recommend that we have 1 solid romantic concerto, and that could be a romantic or a modern concerto. So that could be Saint-Saëns, Lalo, Hatiturian, Shostakovich, Prokofiev, any of what I would call the main core repertoire, Dvorak, of course, any of those. And that depends a lot on your level. But certainly when we've had our classical, we also should have romantic. Added to that, it depends always how much time you have, but we should have 1 kind of more virtuosic, or maybe a slow, beautiful piece, but a shorter piece in length. That could be also turned into something which is a solo suite, maybe Casado or Kodai or any of those type of works, but it could also be something like Popper, Hungarian Rhapsody, or Serenade, or Tchaikovsky Pezzo, or any of these smaller pieces. So we have something which is a little bit more more recital friendly. Now, I'm very hardcore with this, and I think this comes from my old French teacher, but for me, practicing a sonata is not necessarily going into this work. For me, practicing a sonata is very much chamber music, depending on which sonata it is, but it's the chamber music which should be practiced with your pianist as such. Of course, we have bits we have to practice, but I don't think that this should take away from our main practice of our core repertoire. We should do this as an addition. So I don't think it's a very good idea, for example, to spend an entire semester practicing the first movement of Brahms' E minor sonata, when we could be, for example, at that level, learning Saint-Saëns concerto or Lalo concerto. But playing sonata is a beautiful thing, and I enjoy a great long partnership of almost 10 years with my pianist David, and we work those things together. That's of course up to you and your teacher, but certainly when I was studying in Paris, I do not remember once practicing a sonata with my main cello teacher. I practiced that with my chamber music teacher. And of course, when I had some things to work on in a Beethoven sonata or Poulenc or one of the harder sonatas, I would take that to my main teacher, and we would solve some issues. But certainly the main work of it I did together with a pianist, with my chamber professor. And I would encourage you, if you don't have so much time to practice, let's say you're studying two things at the same time, I would encourage you to spend more time on your technical routine, your technical workout, your main core repertoire before spending it on your sonatas. But that's just my pet peeve, and that's up to you. So that more or less is going through this this cello yoga idea. As I said, cello yoga is there for our physical and mental well-being. We like to consider that here at Scandinavian Cello School extremely important, that we have this focus point in the nature, that we can completely forget everything that's going on. And we can sit down with the cello and completely focus and zen in our own world. So if you have some room which you can do that in at home or in your study place, I would really recommend you to find that place where you can work and be free. It's hard for me on tour when you practice in a hotel room. I hate practicing in the place where I wake up. I like to kind of leave it and go somewhere else, but I know that when you're studying, maybe you're in a small studio apartment, that luxury isn't there. But I would really encourage you to try to practice somewhere away from your personal life. That will help you to focus and help you to get really in touch with it. Okay, Stephen.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, I think I've lost the Instagram.
All right. So, do you want to enable the Instagram again, or? Yeah, I'll wait for you to do that. Then we'll start the Q&A.
Yeah.
So for all of you who are here now, you can start preparing your questions, prepare yourself mentally, and then have questions later for Jacob, and then he'll try and answer them as much as possible. I'll check out the Facebook if there's any questions, and I'll post up something for them to know that they can post questions here as well, so that I can.
Yeah. Okay, Instagram's back up. I'm sorry, I don't know why that went down.
Yeah.
Stephen, do you want to explain once more for the people that are just joining what we're doing?
Is there new people joining? Okay, so thank you so much for tuning in to this Cello Yoga lecture. We might post this video up later. I'll need to do some edits and stuff, but now we're going to have like a short Q&A session. So if you have any questions about cello playing, about your career, about anything related to music, to cello, you can just whip them up, prepare them, and then you can ask Jacob, and then Jacob will try and answer them as much as possible.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
To answer.
also, if you have any questions about the whole technical routine that we just did, you may. Stephen, I think you have some from your class already, or?
Yes, I do. So for those of you who wants to speak, you can press on your space bar and then speak, or you can just unmute yourself and then start speaking now. Anybody? You can raise your hand, or
Here we have a questions here.
okay.
And yeah, hi Jacob. I would like to ask about the left hand's tension and release control. So
Okay.
when you shift from one position to another, say the first position to the fourth position, once you have reached the fourth position, do you release the tension as soon as the position is secured, or the tension stays until the next shift?
Okay, so this, if you think of this like more or less an arc going up and down, so that's the position of your weight. So we have the tension, which is here. Oh, I say tension. Let's say weight, right? The weight on the string. So this is here, and then we lift the weight off and shift and place it down. So with the pressure on the string, it's that we're not lifting off like this, but we're still touching the string. So we still have a certain amount on there, but we have pressure, release, and then when we reach here, we put the pressure back on. So it's only in the shift we have the tension off, and then we have the pressure back on as soon as we hit the note. So as soon as you hear the intonation going, or your muscle feels the intonation going, it's there. So it's pressure, release, pressure straight away. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Oh, you know, there's a great book of Janos Starker, these daily exercises, and I remember some lessons with him in Bloomington, and he was crazy about this way of doing it. It's a fantastic way of shifting that I think everybody's more or less adapted that into their technique. But I remember working Dvorak concerto with him, and there are certain sections, this, and whatever I did with the pressure and the release, he wasn't satisfied. And I still, to this day, don't know what I was doing wrong. And it's bugged me forever. So I wish I would know. I guess in about 60 years, I'll be able to go and ask him again. So I really want to know this, because he was so religious about this, also about which finger you would shift from one finger to another one, from higher number to lower number, and so on. But shifting down, and I still don't understand, because we practiced it for, it must have been half an hour, and I didn't realize that I was changing anything. And then he said, okay, you got it. And then I still don't know what I got or what I didn't get. But I guess that I will have to discover one day.
Okay.
So, next. We have one on Instagram.
Great. Okay, what's that? I can't see it on the... Wait, let me check it out.
Can you talk about left and right hand coordination? Yeah, I can talk about that. It's important, of course. So, what piece can I give as a suggestion? Let's say, well, let's just take it on an exercise. Okay, so we have to play together. First of all, we have, as you will all know, this dotted. Then we have doubles. Then we have triplets. And then all these different types of exercises, but I also remember one exercise. I was on a summer camp in France, and there was I was very young, I think 12 or 13, and one of the older girls showed me this. She was already studying masters, and this I've kept on using, and this is the pressure on each note. So after we've done the rhythm, let's say we have this pattern. Okay, so I would first of all play pressure on the first beat group, and then on the second, and then on the third, and then on the fourth, and then without, and so on. So I think that that's those two exercises combined. Also, we have to consider if we're playing sections which are also on two strings, that we keep the most of the weight on the bottom string. So if I just take a pop attitude, pressure, release, pressure. So we have always this on the more pressure on the bottom strings and release. And so on. So when we're playing, of course, more heavy, slower, like this, faster, less heavy, faster, less heavy, faster, less heavy, and so on. So I hope that answers the question on Instagram. Whoever that was, gbenjila04. Okay, Stephen, do you have more questions from your class?
Yeah, anybody from my class, you guys can ask your questions now.
Hello.
Hi.
I want to ask, like you said that you have to breathe out first and then to do the down bow. So while you are doing the down bow, do you actually breathe in or so?
Okay, well, this depends always on the phrase and the piece you're playing. But if we talk about the cello yoga, I always like to breathe out before I start playing. And I know that a lot of people say that, but there's a big difference with breathing out before you're playing and breathing out as you're playing. So if we breathe out, for example, here, we breathe, and we start. But as I breathe, I already start my down bow. So I breathe, and if you remember, we talked about this seaweed and the sea. So we breathe out, moving the bow. And here. But we don't just breathe out. I like to take at least 4 seconds. So and if we are playing a solo piece, it's even better, or we're starting a piece, because it means that we actually have that time to go. But in terms of the cello yoga and the actual exercises that we were playing, we really want to make sure that we're breathing out through mouth. And then we take in, breathe. Be careful not to hyperventilate. I mean, you don't want to pass out by going like this, but I think that if you start to breathe very slowly and you try to breathe in from the nose and out through your mouth in the same way that you would in yoga, then we can continue this going. The point of breathing, when we breathe, our entire body is relaxing, right? So when we breathe, we should really feel this contact with the feet inside our solid core here, and breathing out so that our breath goes directly into the shoulder and that we're pulling the bow. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Good, thanks so much.
Okay.
Anybody else from my studio? Jean, Derek, or Ryan, you guys? Nobody? Okay, so I don't see any questions from Facebook. But on Instagram, somebody just asked, do you have any tips on Spiccato?
Okay, tips on spiccato. Do we mean spiccato as in spiccato this way or this? Right, Manda oi.
Yeah, that was Manda Oi.
Manda oi haven't. So maybe we talk about in one bow, because I got this question. Oh, the first one. Okay, so I will tell you both then. If we take first of all the in one bow, because I got asked this also the other day on Instagram questions, and I'm not sure if the person that asked it got it afterwards, because it was quite difficult to reply on one story. But if we imagine first of all for the down bow and octave spiccato in one bow, so for example in Rococo, so we have first of all to go from very low to very high. So here I have my elbow extremely high and my shoulder extremely low. So what we're going to do is we're going to go from high elbow to very low elbow and high wrist. Okay? So what we want to do is we want to start slowly, dropping each time, dropping the elbow and lifting the wrist and coming in with the wrist. So we've done this weight transfer from high to low, low to high, high to low. So, and now we start a bit faster. Inclination of the hand, the first finger again. We talked about this in the basic position with the cello yoga, but the first finger in, little every time, little bites, transfer the weight. Opposite, transfer the weight up. Faster. And then breathe, relax. And again. And then. And so on. So this, the more we go on, so that weight transfer. Of course, it takes time to practice, but we shouldn't be scared at all of this. And there's the great pop etching. And so on. Okay, so that's in one bow, and now not in one bow. So sautier, which I would call it. So for me, the I don't want to say the secret because that's a stupid way to say it, but the way that I can imagine doing it is that I do not imagine the bow jumping at all. I imagine the contact point. That we are moving from one end to the other. Quite a firm hand. Again, 1, 2, 3 contact points. And at a certain point with the right angle parallel to the bridge, we bite a little bit on each one. So the wrist is actually quite firm and the forearm is moving. And at some point, we start to lift with the elbow and that will bounce the bone. And from the forearm. We can do it any speed. Does that answer the question? I hope. Who that was? Manda Oi. Does that help you, Manda?
Okay, there's
Marie-Louise Linz.
yeah. Any vibrato?
Vibrato exercises.
Yeah.
Oh, vibrato exercises. I think this vibrato exercise, or not really exercise, but the way to play it comes a lot from this being relaxed and having this position that we talked about earlier in the hand, that we have still this pressure but not stuck here. So if we can imagine the wife of my professor Julius Berger, so Stefan Berger, she always talked to me about this vibrato in between the notes, which is so incredibly important. If we think that we vibrate first and then second and then third, we're always going to have a gap. But if we imagine that we have the first and then we have between the first and the second the vibrato, and then we have the finger going down as the first, and then we release. So this is what she meant by vibrato in between the notes, and this is incredibly important when we have, for example, Rachmaninoff or anything really legato on the left hand. We should have that. But going on to how we can do it, I like to imagine almost that there is another hand that's rolling for us. And you know, this is a weird experiment in the last weeks that I'm teaching on Zoom and on Skype. And I gave a masterclass last Friday to the school in Aarhus. And I had to explain to one of the girls exactly how to make this vibrato. And for me, I wanted to reach into the screen and touch and help. But so I had to work out how to explain this. And the best explanation I could come up with for this relaxed vibrato is if you're imagining you're playing the first finger and you take your right hand and you place it on the left hand and you can shake it, then we're still going that way. And here, we're going, so we're rotating from this way. And this is the basic vibrato, right? So this is a nice mid-speed. We really imagine we have here, relaxed, and next, relaxed, and next. And now, if you notice the fingers are certainly released. And then trying to keep the contact. And in terms of exercises, I would recommend really just thinking about this way of playing and then using it on the scales, using it on the one octave scales. If you remember in the Cello Yoga, I said very much about non-vibrato, and now is the time which you can go back and you can add this vibrato on. I think it's vibrato, of course, is something very personal and depending on each piece, but you need to be able to have this relaxed vibrato. I remember as a student having a masterclass with Lewis Claret, and he was advising me always to have the hand open and push that way. And since that moment, I changed my vibrato to be that way because I think it helps to open the tones. We were talking before about this having full tone and having these overtones coming. I think with vibrato, if we are opening this way and pushing down a little bit with our hand angled, this is an exaggeration, but angled that way rather than that way, it means that we can have the better flexibility to push the sound up, and we have this flexibility here also in the knuckle. So that wasn't really exercises for the vibrato, but I hope it helped. Stephen, I don't know if you saw, we have also one more question here.
Yes.
On Instagram.
Yep. About string cross.
String cross. Oh, Elgar, fourth movement. I think I know which part that is. I guess it's this. I imagine. Whoever asked that question, is that the bit which you mean?
Talking about the arpeggio section where it goes that part.
No, I think it's the bit before, but in terms of string crossing anyway, after that. Okay, which bits? Oh, good. Oh, this the second one. In any case, I think I just will explain about string crossing because I think it's very important as well, and it will be also regarding this because that bit, if we're talking about the same passage, I have a very big bee in my bonnet about that because there's a lot of sforzandos, accents, line, tenuto, which is so important, and it will create the phrase. But in terms of string crossings, it's extremely important that, let's say we want to take from E to C, how to get this as smooth as possible. So for me, we're playing always right angles to the string and we're playing parallel to the bridge as we talked about. But to move, I always make sure that I'm almost touching. So if we divide the string into thirds, we have 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, right? So we have 3 parts of the string. And we play always on the top, on the middle, on the second third of the string. But when we want to play, to change the string to, let's say, the upper string, we always should play slightly closer to that string. But that makes sense, and I'm sure many people do that. But the point is, when we've changed the string, we have to remain on the bottom third of the next string. So, and then move over. We can't just go straight from the bottom third of the D string to the middle third of the top string. So we really should play almost double stop and then go over. And that's the only thing that's going to give us a smooth change. So here. And again, with vibrato, we're going as well. Ready? I know it's not in this key, but let's just, for the sake of it, let's play it one string down. I hope that helps think a little bit about the string changing. With this bit with Elgar, send me a DM and I will reply that because that will get us onto a completely different topic about Elgar. And I think if I see who asked that question, I think you played Elgar for me in Mexico last summer. Yes, or we talked about it. So we can talk about it if I make it to Mexico this summer again. I should be there for 3 weeks. Okay, any exercises for thumb position octaves? For example, in Popper's Polonaise. Do you mean this bit? Do you mean that bit? I guess. I can't think of any other octave bit in the Popper Polonaise, which is like that. I mean, exercises, yes. Okay, well, this is going on to like we practice the double stops. For example, actually we still have this pressure release between the thumbs. So we have slow in this way. And make sure that we have the most pressure on the bottom octave. Actually, in this bit, I hardly play the top notes after thumb position. So from here, I have most pressure on the bottom. Yeah, pressure on the D string. I hope that answers the question a little bit. Stephen, we have some questions on the Zoom.
Yes, we have 4 questions, but I'll choose a few. So,
Okay.
Jala asked, do you have any advice or tips on playing Baroque music in terms of tone color?
Oh wow, that's a question for Madalena. So at Scandinavian Cello School, our artistic patron is Maddalena del Gobbo, who is Deutsche Grammophone's only female historical artist. She's a viola da gamba player. And go to her Instagram, Maddalena del Gobbo, and every day during this time at 4 p.m. she has a tea club where she drinks tea and answers your questions and talks about Baroque music, because I would not dare to say something live on Instagram knowing that she's probably going to be watching this about colors, because she will start to tell me it's all about where it's from, different periods, different countries, different everything. And she is absolutely wonderful teacher as well. So I would really recommend you all actually to follow her on Instagram and go and ask her those questions. She's very, very nice and very receptive.
Okay.
She
I'll
will answer perfectly anything you want to know about her. Stephen,
Yeah,
there's another one.
Yeah, so the next question, when we approach a new piece, what are the do's and don'ts to ensure that we don't form bad habits and learning it the wrong way?
For me, I would always try to play precisely everything that is on the score. Forget everything you've ever heard. For example, taking, I don't know, Beethoven sonata. Forget every type of recording you've ever heard, or any type of favorite performance of yours. That's great as an inspiration, but learn exactly what is in the score first. Once you do that, then you have a base, and then when you've got that base down of the playing, then you can start to find new solutions. But I think that with probably like 70-80% of pieces, if we approach them fresh without any external influence, and then we have exactly the intentions of the composer, with the dynamics, with the original Bowings, that's so important. The number of times, for example, I've heard Strauss sonata or Schumann concerto, and I know that there's a lot of phrase marks in there, but if we practice everything that's in the original score, for example, Schumann concerto, the first phrase alone, I know it's phrase marks, but if we practice it with those phrase marks, and then after those phrase marks, when we're used to playing it uncomfortably with those phrase marks, we can then, of course, cut the Bowings as we wish. The main point is that then it's only then that we get this feeling of how the composer, I don't want to say how the composer intended, because it's not like we can call up Schumann and ask him, but we have more of a clue of the direction of the phrase, which we can then base our interpretation on. That's so important, I think, when you're approaching any new piece, that we really go into depth of what's initially written. And now that we have no excuse, we have so many things online, IMSLP with text, with the handwritten score, with first editions, second editions, third editions. We can see how things got changed, and often they got changed with reason, but we can also see how traditions came in. And traditions are a great thing, but we should also start back at basics and from a blank page, first of all. So I think that's probably my advice with bad habits and wrong habits when approaching a piece. I hope that answers that question.
Right. So there are two questions on memory here on Zoom, and there's another one on Instagram by Finn. On memory, how do you have any advice on improving the process of memorization? And like when you play from memory, do you look at your bridge, your cello, or do you look at somewhere else? Two questions actually.
Okay. Yeah, so I think actually this question of memory and memorizing goes down back to the previous question about approaching a piece from the beginning. When we start to work on a piece of music, I think that if you've practiced it enough in depth, it should start to sit into the memory. And that becomes, I get really mad with a lot of my students that come already with the first week with the piece, and they think they have it from memory and they don't have the music there. And that for me is very dangerous, because they haven't absorbed every single detail in. And memory is not just the notes and the dynamic. There's so much more in the score to remember, and we have to, again, talking about a sonata, we have the music there, but for example, with a concerto, we have to not only memorize our line, but we have to know exactly what's going on with the main lines of the orchestra and the themes. So in terms of actual sitting down to memorize something like a Popper etude, I worked out something with some of my younger students, which can be used for everybody actually. And it's quite a nice way to do it, which is that we have these post-it notes. I don't know if you call it something different in Malaysia, Stephen. You know what I mean by post-it?
Yeah, we call it the same, post-it note, like the yellow thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they can be anything. But yeah. So we have those, and what I do is I cover the entire page of the etude with those. And when we are learning this with some of my younger students, we make practice boxes. So, for example, I work out on day 1, they will practice this on practice box 1. Day 2, they will practice box 2, but whilst they practice box 2, they will go over practice box 1 and refresh it. Then practice box 3 and 2 and 4 and 3 and so on. But another way of doing that is that we do cover the whole page with post-it notes. And that way, we only uncover the post-it notes of the bit of the piece that we are working on. So say we're on practice box 7. We have the entire piece covered, but we only uncover practice box 7, which could be the 3rd line down or 4th line down. And it means that we're not doing this habit, which we're always starting at the beginning, and then you kind of know the first phrase and nothing else. But we're starting really on practice box 7. Now, with everything else covered off, if you practice the practice box 1 to 7 in the right way, it means that you've already had 6 days practicing practice boxes 1 to 6. So 6 days of reinforcing will mean that you will have memorized that already, but you'll have no option to cheat and to look at it when you're practicing box 7. So you're all the time reinforcing the memory. And then when you practice box 7, you cover it up and practice box 8. So at that way, we're kind of slowly and concrete building up the memory boxes. And those memory boxes can be used in any piece or any method, but really advise learning it bit by bit, slowly, unless you've got a photographic memory, which is something different. But for us normal people that don't have that, I think that this way of moving in boxes and building it up with stamina every day slowly is the only way that we're going to really solidify it. I would also recommend practicing all pieces together with the piano score. Even if it's a concerto, I mean, it would be lovely to practice on an iPad if you can highlight your line with the orchestral score. But if you don't have that, it's easy to practice with the piano score. And sonatas always play from the piano score. And now everybody's got iPads and tablets, play from the piano score. You know exactly what's going on, and you can, the pianists have an advantage. They see what you're playing, but when you can also see their lines, you'll really work out things much better like that. But that's not to do with memory. That's to do with the score. Okay, Stephen, was that
right? Yep, I think so. If they still have any questions, if you guys still have any questions, you can post it up. There's another one on Zoom. Zhiqing asked, do you have any tips on practicing fast passages? I'm not sure if you mean like if you have. Sorry, you couldn't hear me, right?
No, I can hear you now.
Okay, so one of my other students, she asked, do you have any tips on practicing fast passages? I'm not sure if she means like running notes or like fast passages in general.
I think that this is the same as I said with the synchronization work. So if she was watching that, or maybe afterwards she can skip back and look at that again. I think that it's exactly the same work about playing this with rhythms, playing this with different weights on the different notes, and also playing with the shoulder a little bit, moving up and down, and having more weight on the bottom. I think that all will contribute to playing fast passages better. And then, of course, with the fast passages, often people practice slow and then they expect it to practice fast. But we should have at least 8 different metronome marks there, and always with a metronome, and that we're going up from a slow, but not so slow you don't realize what you're playing, but slow and then moving up a little bit with tempo every time. So we will have and so on. So we are going from slow up to fast, and depending on the passage, you may want to have maybe 7, 8 different speeds. I think that will help.
Right. Next question. Finn on Instagram, he was asking for the interpretation of daggers in Beethoven sonatas, I think, compared to staccato.
This is an in-depth discussion we should have. For me, it really depends where in Beethoven and where in the sonata and which dynamic and what's happened before and what's happening in the bottom, and are we doing it as a reflection of what the left hand of the piano is doing or not. So it's such a complex answer to a simple question, and Finn, I think on our next lesson we can talk about that, and maybe we'll make a special Instagram questions just for Beethoven markings. Certainly with Beethoven sonatas, I would recommend you all to get the brand new edition, while it's like maybe 3 years old now, with all the new so-called new markings, which are actually just the original markings. There's the wonderful kind of old Henley edition edited by Navarra and so on, but unfortunately, as I was saying, it spills over what's the original and what's some traditions. And I think that in terms of those carrots and sforzandos and tenutos, and it's completely different often in this new old edition. And I think that that's the first thing. But Finn, I will talk to you about that another time.
Okay, so we have another question by Tiziano, who's in the Zoom room. Tiziano, do you want to post up a question now?
hear me? Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Can
you.
you hear me? Okay, everybody can. Okay. And well, okay, and can Jacob hear me?
I am very, very softly, so maybe you can
Oh,
turn it up.
okay. Is it better now?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Jacob. Nice to meet you, and thank you for
Hey.
this lecture. It was very helpful. I'm a teacher, a cello teacher, and I'd like to bring the discussion back to one thing regarding the very basics, because I teach to pupils from 10 to 13 in a public school, and we don't have so much time, and we can't really select them in appliance based on talent, for example. So one of the things I struggle most is to have some of them particularly really relax. I mean, maybe the most difficult things for them is to have a relaxed bow stroke, particularly up bows, while they have to coordinate left and right hand for the first time. Do you have a your best tip? What could be your best advice on that?
So are you teaching them in a group, or it's one-to-one?
Single lessons.
Okay, that's already good.
Yes, yes, of course. I couldn't teach in group.
Yeah, no, I find that difficult also. Look, I think that this cello yoga explanation, certainly with the relaxation of playing and the breathing,
yes,
and these
helpful.
little things like thinking of the bow hold like bananas and moving this with the seaweed and all the imagery. I think that in terms of playing relaxed, my experience with teaching younger ones is that they can sometimes not scientifically understand what's going on, but when they make a sound which is really working, it can really help them to get encouraged to make more sounds like that. So I would really try to encourage you. Maybe, I don't know how much physical touch you're doing of them, but certainly for me,
yes, I do.
Yeah, I try to sometimes even take the bow myself, so they're holding the cello, and to pull it for them, because I think that once they realize, especially on small cellos, that it is possible to make a really proper good sound, I think that their enjoyment factor of it will happen. I think that in terms of this, it depends on their patience how long they're actually going to play the open strings. But in terms of trying to surreptitiously warn them into the most important thing is playing with the right angle. And once you've got the right angle, and because all kids more or less at that age, they're not thinking so much about relaxation, because if they don't think about being stiff, they're not going to be stiff. Whereas we at an older age, we're concentrating so much. I think that when we concentrate, we start to tense up. Whereas at the age of 10 and 11, you're not really thinking about it. It's of course difficult if you know that it's difficult, but often at 10 years old, they don't know that it's difficult yet. So I think that if we can try to encourage them into kind of doing some simple breathing exercises, this teaching them to breathe a little bit out like a horse, you know, this, some of them find it quite fun, I think, at that age.
Oh, yes, that's
that they're
great.
making this noise and pulling at the same time. And once they realize that, I think that will help a little bit more to help them get out and to go in, you know, with the right angle. But I think it's all about the angle actually at that age, because especially some of these little cellos are really not so good. And I think that if you play them at exactly the right angle, it can make such a huge difference with the sound. I don't know if that helps you at all, but you're probably thinking about that, I guess.
Yes, I can recognize many things I already do, but this thing of breathing I find really helpful, and the horse.
Yeah.
And the horse one. Yes, thank you.
But I think this the breathing thing is really important, that you're doing this already starting quite a few seconds before the playing, because everybody says, okay, breathe out, play. But if you really breathe out kind of 4 beats and then play 4 beats, I think it can help. This is the reason why I have this, you know, this rhythm for the shifting exercises and this chain bowings always with the scales and so on, because if we keep this this up, this really keeping up the fact that we have this rhythmic control, I think that if our breathing is also in a rhythmic control in relation to the piece, we're not just breathing out and then playing the piece, but we're really breathing in the time of the next bar and then coming in with the upbeats, silent upbeats, you know, like kind of 1, 2, 3. We're still already in this 2. We're already in that relaxed feeling, you know. So I think that helps always. Any level in any piece. It doesn't matter whether you're using Suzuki books or any learning books. I think that we always have this pulse before in the breath.
Yes, I see it. I see it. Thank you very much.
Good.
It was helpful.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And so we've got one question on Zoom and one question on Facebook. Do you still want to answer them, Jacob?
Sure. I think we have maybe like 5 minutes.
Okay. So this question on Zoom is asking, this person has terrible stage fright issues where I often lose or can't feel much of my right hand's weight, resulting in shaky bow during performances. Do you have any ideas on tackling fright?
Yes. In terms of the technical issues, again, do the cello yoga. 6 months, you will feel so much more confidence. I think that if you really can bring that confidence and the sound and the full bow that you're going to get doing the cello yoga into your general playing and this controlling of breath. Nerves, it of course is adrenaline, which is good, but we have to control those nerves in. And of course, it's only natural that you get nervous or adrenaline before going on stage, but it's a question of channeling that into the right way. So I think that if we really, again, this breath control and this relaxation control and this pulling, I think that maybe, I've never seen you play and I don't know that, but maybe you're pulling up the first finger there. And if you pull up the first finger, of course, then the tension gets blocked. And if you have blocked tension, the more stressed you are, the more shaky you're going to get. And it's a vicious circle, because the more then you concentrate and try to relax, the more the bow is going to shake. But if we really can, if we can really channel that in and work out exactly what we're doing. And in terms of stage fright, I think you have to analyze in your head, why are you getting nervous? What is the nerves getting to you for? What are you worried about? Are you worried about forgetting the music memory? Are you worried about screwing up certain passages? Are you worried that, you know, your spike is going to, end pin is going to slip? So you have to really work out, why are you nervous? And if you're nervous because you're performing in front of people, I think that that's something that you can only get away by being 100% in technical control of what you're playing and completely sure with what you want to do with the piece musically. Of course, not micromanaging every phrase. We leave that up to you, sometimes spontaneously. But I think that in terms of this stage fright issue, it will only get better with full technical command and with being able to cope with it, because we'll never not get stage fright. I think it would be unnatural if you're not nervous. And you should be nervous because you should be nervous to do your best. And that's why maybe why the stage fright is coming also. But I think that once you're in control of what you're doing and you know why you are scared, it will make the problem a lot less, and then start to practice and to play in front of people and do it. Here in the school, we always have the opportunity in evenings for people to play through repertoire, either before dinner or whilst everybody else is having a drink and getting ready for the evening. And the point is that people come here and they play through their repertoire before an exam, before a competition, before an audition, because if you can build up that system of playing and getting into the routine that you're gonna play maybe 4, 5, 6 times before you even go on the stage to play it, and then when you've been on the stage, you play it 20 times before you have to play it for a bigger stage. And it's the same with competitions. You should never go to a competition without playing the first, second, third, fourth stages 10, 15 times in the 6 months before. And that's the only way I think that you can be sure not to get rid of stage fright, but to learn to deal with it. And it comes with experience. But I think definitely this repeating the pieces over and over again will help you to diminish it. Because at least then, if you do get really nervous and things to go, you will go again on this automatic pilot, technically.
Right, thanks, Jacob. I have one last question from Facebook. This lady, Charlene, she posted up a question asking, how do you deal with students whom are impatient? She is currently teaching an adult beginner in her 40s, and she likes to rush through the learning despite her advice to go slower, as she needs to work on intonation and her bow hand and everything.
Yeah, this is a tricky one. And I have that at the other end. I have, 13, 14-year-olds which are impatient to do that. And it's normal. I mean, it's normal that you want to go through things, especially as an amateur. You're there to do it for pleasure. And if you're 40 years old and you're doing it, you're obviously paying your money to do it. It's not like your parents are paying for it as an activity as a 10-year-old. It's obviously a love and a pleasure. But I think that it's a tricky one with amateurs, because they are, of course, they love it. In the word amateur, it means a love of something, right? So we have to be very careful about that, because you don't want to put them off, of course, but in the same way, it can be frustrating for them and frustrating for you if they just want to push through repertoire. And at the end of the day, you have to really talk to them and ask them, if you're making this building, as it were, the building is us playing pieces without any foundation, it's just going to crash. I have the opposite problem, which is that I have students which are very talented that learn a piece very quickly, and then they think it's done. Whereas it's the last 10% that makes that piece kind of from a bronze level to a gold level, and that's my difficulty, to try to get into them that last bit of 10% of work that they want to run off and learn another piece. So I think it depends completely on the individual. But I think that in terms of teaching amateurs, it's a little bit more tricky, because they're obviously paying you to do something, and they're paying you that you give them the tools, and they of course want to be like their YouTube idols or their beautiful LP recordings at home, and they want to sound like that. But I think that if they are realistic, they will enjoy a lot more playing the cello if they have the basic fundamentals, and it's a balance between those two. I don't teach amateur cellists so much, so I don't have much experience with that, but I can relate it to kind of younger talents, how to handle that. And it is tricky. It's a tricky one. And I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer for you than that. But I think that you have to seriously talk to them and explain to them that you would love to do more with them and more complex and move on to the next piece and so on. But unless you make these basic fundamentals, and you make a deal together. You'll practice, for example, this cello yoga method, or more scales and more etudes, and then you leave always 15 minutes at the end, maybe to play duets together, or to read through some things. But I think that they have to understand. It's like if you would go to a fitness trainer and you're 10 stone overweight, you wouldn't want to run a marathon the next week. So they have to realize that, you know, you have to first of all lose the 10 stone, and then you get fit, and then you keep going, and then perhaps in 2 years you can run the marathon. But you can't do it after a week. It's the same with cello playing. You can't pick up a cello at 40 and expect to play Prokofiev Symphony Concertante the week after. So I think it's a question of mentally how that student is, and how to somehow get inside their brain to feel more confident with practicing the technical things, and then maybe giving them a little bonbon at the end, a little chocolate of 10 minutes playing together, something which they enjoy playing as a compromise. Stephen, I think that unfortunately we are running out of a little bit of time.
Yes, we are. So I think that's it for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on Facebook, on Zoom, and on Instagram. And I think there's 2 more questions on Instagram, but I think maybe you can get them to send you a question personally on Instagram or something.
Sure. I think anybody else that has any questions left, please send me a DM, and I'll try to get round to doing that. I'm also going to be tomorrow afternoon a guest on Madeleina's Instagram tea time, which is, she starts at 4 o'clock, where she'll play some things, and I think I'll go there about 4:15, 4:20 on Instagram Live. I hope that we have a possibility to be able to stream that also on Facebook. But in any case, head over to Madalena Del Gobbo's Instagram stream then. I think that I'm going to try to do another one of these next week, just to give you a bit of an idea about the status of Scandinavian Cello School now. We're a little bit up against pressure, of course, with all freelance musicians and foundations. We have had our complete economy smashed for the next few months. We have some exciting plans coming, which will be announced next week, actually. Some incredible things that's going to happen next year, in terms of building onto our campus here in Stevns, Denmark. But in order to kind of get to that, we have to get through this little hiccup. So if you are interested in supporting us, there's a link, I think, to our PayPal, which you can, any little bit helps us continuing. We are going on full drive still in this shutdown time, and we're still teaching for free online and doing seminars. So if you want to have a free cello lesson or anything like that, as always, Scandinavian Cello School, everything is tuition free. It's a scholarship for the tuition. So just sign up, email us if you need some help with certain things. It's always good to come to us with a little target. So let's say you've got a piece that you've been working on, you've got some specifics that you want help with, or if you want to have some help also with career planning, applications, writing biographies, anything, we're there to help you. And just because we can't get guests here physically doesn't mean we're stopping. So take advantage of that and just send us a mail. We'll find some time for you.